Good morning, my friend. Another dawn breaks with infinite possibilities stretching before us, and I want you to imagine something powerful with me. Picture yourself making every single choice today, guided not by confusion or fear, but by heaven's perfect wisdom. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." Every day we face hundreds of decisions, from whether to have coffee or tea this morning, to life-altering choices about our careers, relationships, and future. But what if I told you there's a source of divine understanding available to you right now? What if every decision could be filtered through God's infinite wisdom? Before we dive into this incredible journey together, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button if you're ready for divine guidance, and subscribe, because we're about to discover how seeking God's wisdom can transform not just your day, but your entire life. Now let me share something that happened to me just last week that will change how you think about decision-making forever. Standing in the cereal aisle last Tuesday, I found myself frozen for nearly 10 minutes. 10 minutes over breakfast cereal. Honey Nut Cheerios, or Frosted Flakes, organic granola, or protein-packed options. It sounds ridiculous, but in that moment, I realized something profound about our modern struggle with choices. We live in an age of overwhelming options, and decision fatigue has become our silent enemy. Let me tell you about my friend Marcus. He's 38 years old, a brilliant engineer who builds the software that powers half the apps on your phone. 3 weeks ago, Marcus received 2 job offers that should have been a dream come true. Instead, they became his nightmare. The first offer came from a tech company in Austin, just 2 hours from his aging parents, and the hometown where his kids have deep roots. Good salary, stable position, family nearby. The second offer arrived from San Francisco. 40% higher salary, stock options. The kind of opportunity that could set his family up for life financially. For 3 weeks, Marcus barely slept. I watched this confident, decisive man become paralyzed by analysis. Spreadsheets covered his kitchen table. Pros and cons lists grew longer each day. He consulted career coaches called old mentors. Even tried one of those decision-making apps. His wife Sarah told me she'd find him at 2 in the morning, staring at his laptop, trying to calculate the cost of living differences, weighing private school tuition against mortgage payments. But Marcus isn't alone in this struggle. Scientists tell us the average person makes 35,000 decisions every single day. 35,000. Think about that for a moment. From the instant you wake up, your brain is bombarded with choices. Should I check my email first or brush my teeth? Which route to work avoids traffic? What should I wear that's professional but comfortable? I know a single mother named Sarah, 42 years old, who works as a nurse at our local hospital. Every morning she faces an exhausting sequence of decisions before most of us have even opened our eyes. Breakfast choices for 3 kids with different tastes and dietary restrictions. Which outfit projects confidence for the staff meeting while remaining practical for 12-hour shifts? Which route to work? Which school pickup arrangement? Whether to stop for gas now or risk running late? By 9 a.m., Sarah told me she already feels mentally drained, and her real work hasn't even begun. Her decision-making energy is depleted before she's even helped her first patient. This isn't just personal struggle. This is a crisis of our information-saturated age. We live in unprecedented times of choice abundance. Our grandparents might have had 3 television channels. We have streaming services with thousands of options. They shopped at one grocery store. We have supermarkets with 40,000 different products. They often had one career path. We're told we can be anything, do anything, choose anything. But here's what's fascinating. When I visit my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, she often shakes her head and says, "Back in my day, choices were simpler. You married your high school sweetheart, worked for one company, your whole life lived in the same town where you were born. There's nostalgia in her voice, but also something else. Peace. In biblical times, when people faced major decisions, they sought out elders, prophets, or the priest with the Urim and Thummim. They understood that human wisdom had limits. Today, when we're confused, where do we turn? Google gives us millions of answers in milliseconds. Social media offers countless opinions from people we've never met. We have information overload, but wisdom shortage. I think about Abraham called to leave everything familiar without knowing his destination. Moses asked to lead a nation out of slavery with nothing but a staff. David, a shepherd boy, facing a giant. These weren't decisions they could Google. They couldn't create spreadsheets comparing options. They had to rely on something deeper, something that transcended human logic and understanding. But what if there was a different way? What if we could tap into wisdom that transcends human understanding? What if the same God who guided Abraham's steps and gave Solomon legendary discernment wants to guide our daily choices too? The weight of wrong choices can crush the human spirit in ways that physical burdens never could. Let me tell you about David, a man I've known for 15 years, whose story will break your heart and rebuild your faith in the power of divine guidance. David built his marketing company from absolutely nothing. Started in his garage with a borrowed laptop and determination that seemed unstoppable. For 12 years, he grew that business through careful planning, long hours, and what everyone called his natural business instincts. By age 41, he had 25 employees, 3 major clients, and a reputation as the go-to marketing strategist in our city. Then came the decision that changed everything. Success can be intoxicating, and David became drunk on his own achievements. When the opportunity came to expand rapidly, he ignored every warning sign. His wife, Lisa, expressed concerns about cash flow. His longtime mentor, Pastor Williams, suggested prayer and careful planning. Even his accountant recommended a slower, more measured approach. But David was riding high on confidence. He opened 3 new offices in 6 months, hired 50 people, signed expensive leases, and committed to overhead that required perfect execution. He relied purely on business logic, market projections, and if I'm being honest, his own ego. The expansion was supposed to triple his revenue within 2 years. Instead, it became a catastrophe of biblical proportions. Cash flow problems emerged within 8 weeks. Clients began delaying payments. 2 major contracts fell through due to economic uncertainty. The new offices were bleeding money faster than the established business could generate it. Within 18 months, David's thriving company collapsed into bankruptcy. I'll never forget visiting him during those final days. The once bustling office was nearly empty. Boxes of files sat stacked in corners. The cheerful motivational posters still hung on walls, but they felt like mocking reminders of dreams that had died. David sat in his corner office at 2 a.m, staring out the window at the city lights, feeling utterly alone. The ripple effects of that one unwise decision spread like cracks in an earthquake. Lisa had to return to teaching a profession she'd left years earlier when the business became successful. Their dream vacation to celebrate their 20th anniversary was canceled. The money they'd saved for their daughter's college education disappeared into the legal fees and debt settlement. But the human cost went far deeper than financial loss. 50 people lost their jobs. Some were young parents with mortgages and car payments. Others were older employees who'd left secure positions to join David's growing company. I watched grown men cry in the parking lot as they cleaned out their desks. Families faced foreclosure. Relationships strained under financial pressure. The weight of responsibility nearly destroyed David emotionally. His health deteriorated. Stress manifested in panic attacks and insomnia. His relationship with Lisa, once the bedrock of his life, became strained by financial pressure and the unspoken question hanging between them. How could someone so smart make such a devastating mistake? The deepest wound wasn't financial. It was the complete loss of trust in his own judgment. David told me months later that he second-guessed every decision, from which restaurant to choose for dinner, to whether he was qualified to help his kids with homework. When you make a choice that destroys not just your own life, but the lives of people who trusted you, it shakes your confidence to the very core. This reminds me of King Saul's impatient decisions in the Old Testament. Faced with pressure and afraid of losing his advantage, Saul made rash choices that cost him his kingdom. Like David, Saul relied on his own understanding instead of waiting for divine guidance. But David's story isn't the only one. Let me tell you about Jenny, a bright college student who made a different kind of devastating choice. At 19, she chose her major, not based on her passions or calling, but to please her parents, who dreamed of having a doctor in the family. For 3 years, Jenny suffered through pre-med requirements she hated. Organic chemistry felt like torture. Biology labs left her nauseous and anxious. She'd sit in lectures about medical procedures, feeling like a fraud, knowing in her heart this wasn't her path. But her parents had invested so much money, so much hope. They bragged to friends about their future doctor daughter. How could she disappoint them? Jenny developed night terrors about becoming the doctor she never wanted to be. She'd wake up in cold sweats, imagining herself in 30 years successful but miserable healing bodies, while her own soul remained sick with regret. The pressure created anxiety so severe, she began having panic attacks during exams. In these moments of isolation, when the weight of poor choices feels unbearable, we realize our desperate need for wisdom beyond ourselves. Whether it's David facing bankruptcy or Jenny trapped in the wrong career path, the human experience teaches us that our own understanding has dangerous limitations. But every story of devastating choices contains the seeds of redemption, and David's breakthrough came in the most unlikely place. Sitting in his car outside the bankruptcy courthouse, having just signed papers that officially closed the chapter on 15 years of work, David hit absolute rock bottom. In that moment, something his grandmother used to say echoed in his memory like a voice from heaven. Pray, first decide, second Davy. God sees what we cannot see. She'd been gone for 8 years, but her words cut through his despair like a lighthouse beam through fog. For the first time in years, David broke down completely, not the controlled, stoic tears of a businessman facing setbacks, but the desperate weeping of a man who finally understood his need for help beyond himself. Right there in the courthouse parking lot, he prayed with more honesty than he'd managed since childhood. God, I've made a mess of everything. I thought I was so smart, so capable. I've hurt my family, my employees, everyone who trusted me. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if it can be fixed. But I remember what James wrote, that if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask. So I'm asking, help me. It wasn't a dramatic moment with thunder and lightning. There was no audible voice or miraculous vision. But something shifted in David's spirit. For months, he'd been trying to solve everything through his own strength, his own intelligence, his own connections. The bankruptcy hadn't just destroyed his business. It had destroyed his self-reliance. That evening, he made a phone call he'd been too proud to make for 2 years. Pastor Williams had tried to reach out several times during the crisis, but David had been too embarrassed to respond. Now he dialed the number with shaking fingers. Pastor, it's David. I know it's been too long. I know I should have listened when you tried to warn me. I've lost everything, and I don't know where to go from here. Can we talk? Pastor Williams' response still gives me chills when David recounts it. Son, I've been praying for this phone call for 18 months. Not for your business to fail, but for you to remember who holds real wisdom. Come over tonight. Let's seek God's heart for your next steps. This surrender represents the turning point that separates human struggle from divine intervention. Throughout Scripture, we see this pattern repeated. King Solomon, when offered anything he desired, asked for wisdom rather than wealth or long life. God was so pleased with this choice that he granted not only wisdom, but also the riches and honor Solomon hadn't requested. Consider Solomon's famous judgment with the baby claimed by two mothers. Human logic might have suggested splitting the child in half seemed fair, but divine wisdom revealed the true mother's heart through her willingness to give up her claim rather than see the child harmed. That's the difference between human reasoning and divine discernment. Daniel faced impossible situations in Babylon, interpreting dreams and visions that baffled the wisest counselors in the empire. But Daniel's wisdom didn't come from education or experience. It came from seeking God's understanding through prayer and fasting. Joseph spent years in prison for crimes he didn't commit, but when Pharaoh needed someone to interpret troubling dreams, Joseph's divine insight didn't just save Egypt from famine. It positioned him to save the very family who had betrayed him. Let me tell you about Jenny's transformation as well. The same week David was declaring bankruptcy, Jenny was sitting in organic chemistry staring at molecular structures that might as well have been hieroglyphics. She'd failed her second exam, and her professor had recommended she consider dropping the course. That night, Jenny called her parents with news they didn't want to hear. She was dropping out of pre-med. Not dropping out of college, but changing her entire career path. The conversation was painful. Tears, accusations of wasting money, questions about her commitment and character. But Jenny had reached her own moment of surrender. Mom, Dad, I love you both, but I can't live your dreams anymore. I have to discover what God wants for my life, even if it disappoints you. For the next 6 months, Jenny spent more time in prayer than she'd ever spent studying chemistry. She asked one simple question over and over. God, what do you want for my life? The answer came gradually through a series of small nudges and growing convictions. She started volunteering at the local animal shelter. At first, it was just a way to fill time while figuring out her future. But something awakened in her heart when she worked with abandoned and injured animals. The same compassion her parents wanted her to show to human patients, Jenny discovered she had in abundance for God's creatures. The revelation came during a late-night shift at the shelter when a badly injured stray dog was brought in. Jenny assisted the veterinarian who worked to save the animal's life, and suddenly everything clicked. She could still be in medicine. She could still heal and help. But her calling was to care for animals, not humans. Lord, I release my need to figure everything out. Jenny prayed that night. I surrender my limited understanding for your infinite wisdom. The miracle of wisdom-guided living isn't always dramatic or instantaneous. Sometimes it unfolds slowly, like dawn breaking over mountains, revealing landscapes that were hidden in darkness. David's journey back from bankruptcy taught him to approach every decision through a completely different lens. Starting over at 43 wasn't easy. David's new consulting firm began in his home office, just him, a laptop, and a commitment to seek God's guidance before making any significant choice. He developed what he called his wisdom methodology. Every potential client, every business decision, every hire went through prayer first. He established weekly meetings with Pastor Williams, not just for emotional support, but for spiritual counsel on business decisions. They studied biblical principles for ethical business practices. David learned that Proverbs contains more practical business wisdom than most MBA programs. His first real test came 6 weeks after launching the consulting firm. A former colleague offered him a lucrative contract with a tobacco company. The money would have solved his immediate financial pressures and given his family some breathing room. But something felt wrong in his spirit. After prayer and counsel, David turned down the contract. From a purely financial perspective, it seemed like a mistake. Lisa worried they'd made the wrong choice. But 2 weeks later, That same colleague referred David to a clean energy startup that needed marketing strategy. The project was smaller initially, but led to a long-term relationship that became the foundation of David's rebuilt business. This is how divine wisdom works. It often looks foolish to human logic. Turning down guaranteed money for uncertain possibilities seems crazy until you see the bigger picture God is painting. David's new company grew slowly but steadily. Every hire was bathed in prayer. Every client was evaluated not just for profitability, but for alignment with kingdom values. When decisions seemed unclear, David would fast and seek counsel from mature believers. 5 years later, David's firm employed 20 people. Not the 50 he'd had before, but 20 men and women who shared his values and commitment to excellence. The company had waiting lists of potential clients. Industry publications featured articles about David's ethical business practices. But the real transformation was in David himself. The driven, self-reliant entrepreneur had become a man of peace who made decisions from a place of rest rather than anxiety. His marriage to Lisa was stronger than ever. They'd learned to seek God's wisdom together on family decisions. Meanwhile, Jenny's journey took an equally remarkable turn. Her decision to pursue veterinary medicine, which had initially devastated her parents, led to opportunities none of them could have imagined. She was accepted into veterinary school with a scholarship she hadn't even known existed. During her second year of vet school, Jenny met Michael at an animal rescue event. He was a wildlife biologist studying endangered bird species. Their shared passion for creation care created an instant connection that grew into love. Jenny specialized in wildlife rehabilitation, a field that combined her medical training with her heart for conservation. Her parents, who had initially been ashamed of her career change, now bragged about their daughter, who was featured in National Geographic for her work with endangered species. The ripple effects of wisdom-guided decisions extend far beyond the immediate choice. David's teenage son watched his father's transformation with wide eyes. When assigned a school project to interview a successful business owner, he chose to interview his dad about values-based leadership. The presentation impressed teachers and classmates. Several students asked follow-up questions about faith and business ethics. David's son began considering a business degree with focus on ethical leadership. Family dinner conversations shifted from talk about profit margins to discussions about how business can serve kingdom purposes. Jenny's work expanded beyond her veterinary practice. She and Michael established a rescue center that served as an educational facility for school children. Kids learned about animal care creation stewardship and the responsibility humans have to protect God's creatures. Both David and Jenny discovered that when you align your choices with God's wisdom, you don't just succeed, you find peace that surpasses understanding. The anxiety that once drove their decision-making was replaced by a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're walking in divine will. The fruit of wise choices isn't just external success. It's the internal transformation that happens when you learn to trust God's understanding over your own. David told me recently, "My best business decisions have never come from the boardroom. They've always come from the prayer room." David's company celebrated its 5th anniversary last month, and the transformation from those dark bankruptcy days seems almost supernatural. The business now employs 25 people across multiple offices, but this time, the growth came through patience, prayer, and divine timing rather than ego-driven expansion. Industry magazines have featured David's company as an example of success with soul. Fortune magazine interviewed him for an article about entrepreneurs who prioritize ethics over profit. Harvard Business School invited him to speak about values-based leadership. But David's response to these accolades reveals the depth of his transformation. "Every business decision I make now starts in prayer," he told the Harvard audience. "I've learned that God cares about our work because our work affects people He loves. When we seek His wisdom in business, we're not just building companies. We're stewarding resources and relationships for His kingdom." The company's culture reflects David's spiritual growth. Monday morning meetings begin with prayer. Employees are encouraged to bring ethical dilemmas to leadership for discussion. The company donates 10% of profits to local charities and provides paid volunteer days for staff. But perhaps the most beautiful transformation is in David's marriage to Lisa. The financial pressure that nearly destroyed their relationship has been replaced by spiritual partnership in decision-making. They pray together about major purchases, job changes, and family plans. Their children witness this example daily. When their teenage son needed to choose between two summer job opportunities, the family held a prayer meeting to seek wisdom together. The job that paid less but offered better mentorship was clearly the right choice after prayer, and the summer experience led to a scholarship opportunity the family never expected. The generational impact extends beyond David's immediate family. His son's friends often join family dinners where conversations naturally turn to faith and decision-making. Several young men have asked David to mentor them as they navigate college and career choices. Jenny's story reveals equally remarkable long-term fruit. Her veterinary practice has evolved into something that resembles ministry more than traditional business. The rescue center serves hundreds of abandoned animals each year while educating thousands of children about creation care. Her work caught the attention of international relief organizations. Jenny now leads mission trips to developing nations training veterinarians in countries where animal care knowledge is desperately needed. What began as personal obedience to God's call has become global ministry. Jenny and Michael's marriage produced twin daughters who are growing up surrounded by rescued animals and kingdom values. At age 5, the girls already show compassion that amazes adults. They pray for sick animals and understand that caring for creation is part of following Jesus. Jenny recently published a book titled God's Creatures: A Veterinarian's Faith Journey that has sold thousands of copies and inspired young people to consider careers in animal care. Churches invite her to speak about finding God's will for your life and following divine calling despite initial opposition. The transformation in both families reveals a profound truth about divine wisdom. When we align our choices with God's heart, we don't just experience personal success. We become conduits of blessing that flow to others for generations. David mentors other Christian entrepreneurs who are struggling to integrate faith and business. His counsel consistently focuses on the same principle: seek God's wisdom first, then make decisions from that foundation. He's watched multiple business owners avoid the mistakes that nearly destroyed his life. Jenny speaks to college students who are wrestling with career decisions and family pressure. Her testimony gives courage to young people who feel called to unconventional paths. Several students have changed majors after hearing her speak, choosing to follow their God-given passions rather than parental expectations. The peace that both David and Jenny radiate attracts people who are hungry for wisdom in their own decision-making. They've learned that walking in divine understanding produces a quality of life that human wisdom alone cannot achieve. But the most remarkable fruit is the deep, unshakable peace that comes from knowing your choices align with heaven's heart. Both David and Jenny describe decision-making now as conversation with God rather than anxious deliberation. They've learned to recognize His voice and trust His timing. David told me recently, "I sleep better now than I ever did when business was successful by worldly standards." When you know your choices, honor God, and serve others, there's a rest in your soul that no amount of money can purchase. My friend, wherever you are in your decision-making journey today, I want you to know that divine wisdom is not reserved for biblical heroes or spiritual giants. It's available to you right now in this moment for every choice you face today. Maybe you're standing at a crossroads in your career, wondering whether to take that new job or start that business. Perhaps you're facing relationship decisions that will affect your entire family's future. You might be struggling with financial choices that keep you awake at night, or health decisions that feel overwhelming. God has specific wisdom for your unique situation. The same divine understanding that guided David through business restoration and led Jenny to her calling is accessible to you through prayer and surrender. James, chapter 1, verse 5, promises us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him." I want to encourage you to start small if this feels overwhelming. You don't have to transform your entire decision-making process overnight. Begin with smaller daily choices. Before you check your phone in the morning, ask God to guide your day. When choosing your route to work, invite His wisdom. As you interact with family, friends, and co-workers, seek His heart for your words and actions. Building your wisdom muscle through small choices prepares you for the larger decisions that will inevitably come. David learned to seek God's guidance about which coffee shop to visit for client meetings. Jenny prayed about which classes to take as electives. These seemingly minor choices developed their sensitivity to God's voice. The Lord gives wisdom. From His mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright, as Proverbs tells us. This isn't just ancient poetry. It's a present reality for every believer who chooses to seek divine understanding over human logic. Right now, I want to pray a declaration over your life and decision-making. Father God, we come before you, acknowledging our desperate need for wisdom beyond our own understanding. We confess that our human logic has limitations, and our perspective is often clouded by fear, pride, or selfish ambition. We break off confusion, paralysis, and anxiety over the choices facing your children today. We declare that divine understanding is flowing right now to every person listening to these words. We speak clarity over muddled thinking and peace over anxious hearts. Lord, you are Jehovah Ra, our shepherd, who guides us beside still waters and in paths of righteousness. You are our wonderful counselor, the source of all wisdom and understanding. We open our spiritual ears to hear your voice and our hearts to receive your guidance. We declare victory over wrong choices and their consequences. Where poor decisions have created bondage, we speak freedom. Where unwise choices have brought financial loss, we declare that you are Jehovah Jireh, our provider, who opens doors no man can shut. We pray for divine understanding over finances, relationships, career decisions, and family choices. Give your children eyes to see opportunities that align with your heart and courage to say no to options that look good but aren't your best. Protect them from deceptive voices that promise success apart from righteousness. Guard their hearts from worldly wisdom that leads to destruction. Surround them with counselors who will speak your truth in love. We declare this is your season of wise choices. I can see in the spirit realm doors beginning to open as you align your decisions with heaven's heart. I see relationships being healed through wisdom-guided conversations. I see financial breakthroughs as you steward resources according to kingdom principles. I see purposes being revealed as you seek God's will for your career and calling. Some of you are about to discover gifts and talents you didn't know you possessed. Others are going to find courage to pursue dreams you've been afraid to chase. You are being commissioned as a wisdom seeker in your family, workplace, and community. People will begin asking what's different about your decision-making process. Your peace in the midst of uncertainty will draw others who are hungry for divine guidance. Here's my challenge for you today. Choose one area of your life where you need wisdom and commit to seeking God's guidance before making any decisions in that area. It might be a relationship that needs attention, a financial situation requiring direction, or a career move you've been considering. Before you make any choice in that area, spend time in prayer. Read scripture that applies to your situation. Seek counsel from mature believers. Wait for peace in your spirit before moving forward. Watch how God begins to guide your steps when you genuinely seek His wisdom. I want to hear your breakthrough stories. Drop a comment below and tell me about one area where you need divine wisdom today. Are you facing a career decision, relationship crossroads, financial choices, parenting challenges? Share your situation so our community can pray for God's guidance in your life. If this message has encouraged your heart, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs divine wisdom for the choices they're facing. Subscribe to this channel because every day we're discovering more of God's heart for your life and learning to walk in His perfect will. Thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you today. May divine understanding guide every step you take. May you experience the peace that comes from knowing your choices align with heaven's heart. And may you discover that seeking God's wisdom first transforms not just your decisions, but your entire life. Go in peace, my friend, knowing that the God who holds the universe in His hands cares deeply about every choice you make today. His wisdom is available, His guidance is sure, and His love for you is unchanging. This is your day to start seeking God's wisdom first. This is your moment to invite divine understanding into every decision you make.